Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your relationship without your man's conscious effort so you feel desired, taken care of, and special, even if your relationship feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today I'm talking about 3 secrets to succeeding in business and love with the same person. My guest, Deb, was giving and doing so much to get her husband's appreciation, but he was the grumpiest man ever and ignored her as much as he could get away with. She suspected he was a dry drunk, but she encouraged him to drink beer anyway so he would at least talk to her. When his son slapped her across the face and he didn't lift a finger to defend her, she brought up divorce and insisted they go to counseling. But just 2 weeks in, the counselor happily declared they no longer needed counseling. Today, she says her marriage is fantastic and she feels like the passenger while her husband is the chauffeur. She's going to describe exactly how she changed everything for the better. And then I'll be giving out the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award, which will have you unwittingly making problems in your relationship where there were none. All of that is coming up. But first, let's talk about 3 secrets to succeeding in business and love with the same person. When you work with your spouse, it can be too much togetherness. Plus, if you don't see things the same way, it can create tension both at work and at home. There's no pressure relief when the work conversation goes on through dinner. And there's no escaping the problems at home when you leave for work either. This can stress your marriage big time, or it can be a great way to keep more money in the family and spend more time with the person you chose as your partner in life. Having experienced it both ways, I'm grateful to know what makes all the difference. Here are 3 secrets to succeeding while working with your spouse. My husband, John, and I are both entrepreneurs, and we both work from home. And in the early days, I wanted to manage my husband like an employee by telling him which projects to prioritize and how to do them best. Not that I was very qualified to do this, mind you, unless you count getting fired from my job. I was then going to help him count all the money after he did what I told him to. But that never happened. He resisted my instructions mightily, and our business ventures floundered. Our personal finances were in chaos, and my marriage was in trouble too for the same reason. I had become a porcupine wife and coworker he mostly avoided. I thought the problems were because he was so uncooperative. Never that I was overbearing. I thought I was smarter than him. So it only made sense for me to help him. And I didn't know that helpful in wife language is critical in husband language, or that fear lurked beneath my urge to control the smart man I married. I had no idea I could choose my faith over my fear in those moments. But now that I have a world famous system for doing just that, I see the direct connection between the steps that revitalized my failing marriage and the dramatic improvement in our bottom line. Here are the life-changing things I did that helped us both. Number 1, I stayed out of his business to focus on mine. When I was the armchair quarterback of my husband's business, I wasn't tending to my own life, which is like a car going down the street with no one behind the wheel. It turns out there was a good reason I was avoiding my life. I was scared to show up for it. When I switched my focus from his life to mine, abundance emerged. I was called to write a controversial book, which got me lots of hate mail, but also became a New York Times bestseller that was translated into 19 languages in 30 countries. Dateline NBC did an investigative report on my methods, and the Today Show and The View invited me to be a guest. Going on national TV was terrifying and thrilling because the book shot up to #1 on Amazon and launched a worldwide movement. Next, I was invited to give live talks, which I had never done before. And I started an international relationship coaching company, also the source of free-floating terror. I'm not sure if my calling will ever get less scary. I hyperventilated on the phone to my sister while preparing to film the Empowered Wife TV series on Amazon Prime, and I had several failed attempts to create a radio show before beginning this podcast, which made me wonder if anyone would listen. No wonder I just wanted to focus on what my husband was doing. That seemed less risky, but it was also less thrilling. Now, I know if something is utterly terrifying, it's probably a good sign that I'm supposed to do it. That's been my GPS for success for the last couple of decades now. And when I'm tempted to manage my husband's life, I'm probably avoiding the next big thing in this adventurous mission I'm on to end world divorce. My husband also ended up being very successful with his business when I gave him the space and respect to make decisions as he saw fit. Who knew? Now, when we work together, I just stay in my lane and admire the good work he does in his. Number two, I asked my husband for help with my business. Even though I forgot for a while, John is wicked smart and he wants me to be happy and he has my back. So he's a fantastic resource for business advice. I'm constantly asking to borrow his brain. In the bad old days, he would make suggestions, and if I didn't agree, I would shoot them down, leaving us both frustrated and drained. These days, I know I can listen to his ideas, and if they don't sit right with me, that just means I need to keep saying what I want or ask for more help. For example, for a long time, my videographer husband had been expressing his view that my business would be well served to have a presence on YouTube. And that sounded great to me on paper. And as a writer, paper is where I'm most comfortable. I couldn't imagine what the visuals would be for my videos. I mean, actors, illustrations, hand puppets, maybe. So I said what was true for me, which is I would love that. And I don't know what to show on those videos. John collected the videos that I already had, but it hadn't occurred to me as YouTube material. And you might even be listening to this podcast on YouTube right now because my husband puts them on there every week. Voila, I have a YouTube channel. Q, you are the wind beneath my wings, right? Number three, I focused on what I wanted more of. Long before my husband started his business, I had unwittingly been repeating a negative spouse fulfilling prophecy about how he could make more money if he would ask for a raise or get a better job. And what my husband heard was, you don't make enough money. And this is how good I am at manifesting what I focus on. He quit his job and wasn't making any money. When I realized I'd been sending the opposite message of what I wanted to manifest, I decided to switch it up. I came up with the spouse fulfilling prophecy, you've always been a good provider. And just for fun, I started calling him Mr. Moneybags. And around that time, my husband started the video business he had for decades, and he became more successful financially than he'd ever been, as well as happier working for himself. And the results of focusing and speaking about the outcome I wanted instead of the one I didn't want have been breathtaking. So, if you're currently having needless emotional turmoil about your relationship, I can't help but wonder what might emerge for you as you get squarely on your own paper and use your energy for your purpose and your passion. If you'd like to be my guest on the Empowered Wife podcast and share about how you fixed a struggling relationship using the 6 intimacy skills, I would love to interview you. Just go to lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest to let me know that you are willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce by telling your relationship story. I look forward to meeting you. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest. My guest, Deb, was giving and doing so much to get her husband's appreciation. But he was just the grumpiest man ever and ignored her as much as he could get away with. She suspected he was a dry drunk, but she encouraged him to drink beer anyway, so he would at least talk to her. When his son slapped her across the face and he didn't lift a finger to defend her, she brought up divorce and insisted they go to counseling. But just 2 weeks in, the counselor happily declared they no longer needed counseling. Today, she says her marriage is fantastic and she feels like the passenger while her husband is the chauffeur. She's going to describe exactly how she changed everything for the better. Deb, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
So, what were things like in the bad old days of your marriage?
Oh my goodness. Well, I don't even know where to start. I started ruining it right away. And I didn't
Unwittingly.
even know. Yeah, I didn't know. We were probably maybe a year in, and I noticed that he was grouchy and just kind of on me all the time, criticizing me for this or being grumpy about that. And so my bright idea was, because I couldn't remember him all the time, I would get past it and it'd be okay. So I decided, well, I'll keep a journal. Every time he does something that, is mean, I'll just jot it down. And then, maybe after a week or so, I'll sit him down and I'll say, look, these are the things you're doing that really upset me. Well, yeah, that didn't go over well because he busted me when I was writing it one day. And he goes, what are you writing? And I said, oh.
I can't tell you.
So I had to come clean and I told him, and he was like, well, that's just not going to work. And so I was like, okay, well, he doesn't want to know how I feel. So I guess I'll clean house more then. Maybe he'll like it better. Yeah. So that's kind of how I got started off going down this miserable path of it was bad.
But you really were craving his appreciation, it sounded like.
Oh yeah. I bought him a dog. He had always wanted a Great Dane. And so I bought him one for his birthday. And he totally fell in love with the dog. And and the unfortunate part was I remember he would get up in the middle of the night and take him out to the bathroom. He doted on this dog. And I told him, I said, you were nicer to that dog than you are anybody in this house. And I was like, how do we get that kind of attention?
Yeah. Right. And really, and we're laughing about it now. And it is hilarious now, but at the time, in a
Oh,
way, like tremendous heartbreak under that request,
oh,
right? Like
oh,
how do I get as much attention as the dog does? But that
yeah.
dog was probably really happy to see him all the time too, right? Was not keeping a list of things that he wanted to complain about later. So, and you guys also you're a blended family.
Oh, yeah.
So you have so your kids and his kids?
Yeah, we each brought three to the marriage.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so that brings
So,
an extra level of challenge.
yeah, when the kids were young, his were we kind of it was kind of cool because his oldest teen, they were 19, 17, and 15, and mine were 10, 8, and 6. So we kind of, it kind of ended up being like it would have been a normal family, Um, and at first it was like fun. It was really cool, but then over time, there just seemed to be a lot of favoritism. I know why now. I didn't then. Um, and my husband was really, really hard on my kids. They couldn't do anything right, and his kids were golden. If they made a mistake, it was well, they're learning. And if mine made a mistake, um, well, certainly, they're just horrible people. And, or I don't even know that, but it was just really harsh, and I sat, back and I, I remember thinking, okay, my mom always told me, always choose your husband first because your kids are going to grow up and go away. And so you need to, make sure he comes first. So even when he was being so hard on my kids, I was like, but he's being mean to my babies. And how do I choose him? And I even, oh my gosh, one time I thought he was being horrible to him. And I was afraid he was going to go out back and do something. He had sent them out back to do some chores. And he was really angry. And he kept going out there and hollering at them. And it was getting pretty heated and I was getting scared. And so I didn't know what to do. And so I was like, aha, man, another one of my bright ideas. I'm going to set up the video camera. So I sneak out, and set that video camera up in a tree, because I was going to catch him in something bad. That was my intention. And well, after everything was said and done, I got the video and I was actually, it's so sad because I was actually disappointed because I didn't have evidence. Because, yeah.
So, because he wasn't that bad, or you didn't get the video?
You know what? Because after I set up the video camera, he didn't actually even go back out there. So,
very disappointing. So you didn't get to, you didn't, it robbed you of the opportunity of showing him how bad he was.
Right?
Yes. Gosh, it's just so relatable, Deb. I can really relate to wanting to show my husband how bad he was. Like that was somehow going to get me to feel I was going to feel loved, or I don't know exactly what I thought I was going to get out of it. But and you were feeling quite neglected, also quite ignored.
Very. Criticized a lot. You know, um, I, I always made sure that I would take a job so I could make sure that I was home. On nights and weekends because that was his schedule. And I didn't want to be away. And part of it was me and part of it was wanting to be around him. And oh golly, it was just, I just turned myself inside out trying to be everything for everybody. And yeah. And every time we'd have an incident, I would just, I would just do more. I would take on another responsibility. I would, add it onto my list of things to do, and about every 5 years, because before I found her skills, it was about every 5 years we would take another leap into a more horrible universe. It's just, yeah. And the whole time I'm buying books going, something's got to change, something, I don't know what to do, and, my bookshelves were groaning underneath the weight of all the books I had bought.
Having every relationship book to fix this marriage.
Yeah. And I introduced him to a pastor through some friends of a friend, and he was like, "Okay, well, we'll go to church." And my husband says, "Okay, I'll go." And he goes, "I'll try it once, and I'll see if I like it or not." Well, he ended up really liking the pastor, and I think, great. Everything's going to be awesome now.
This is it. This is going to fix things.
Yeah. Only he started volunteering for things at church, and I thought, okay, well, that's cool. That's good.
Yeah.
Because he just really has a very generous nature. I mean, that is just who he is. So we said, okay, yeah. There were some opportunities at the church, and I was like, okay, well, yeah, on Wednesday nights, I'll clean the sanctuary and you can do the yard work. And that'll be something we can do together. It'll be fun. Yay, Well, it didn't turn out that way because Because what happened was I would go on Wednesdays, and he would be like, "Well, I'm going to go do mine on Saturday. I don't feel like doing it during the week." And I said, "Well, okay, I guess we'll do it on Saturday." Um, well, but I was just like, "Yeah, but then we don't have any time, because we're going to church on Sunday and we're at the church on Saturday. What that doesn't leave any time for fun." Um, so in my helpful place, I said, "Well, you know what?" I said, "I'll just do the cleaning and the yard work during the week, since you won't have any time to do it on the weekend." Well, you'll know where that left me.
Felt a little
Bitter and
resentful, I bet.
resentful because
Yeah.
everybody's going, "Matt, you did such a good job in the yard." You know, I'm going, "No, no,
It
no,
was me.
I."
That was me. I want credit. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
instead of it being a fun couple thing, it's just one more burden on you. You look around
Yeah.
and think, how did that happen? Right?
Yeah, and then so of course that dragged me down another road of being controlling, is because then I I would say, "Are you?" He would try to volunteer for something else, and then I would be like, "I'm just going to end up doing that." Like, don't you volunteer for anything else because I know it's going to end up on my
Ah, I love it. I know you are adorable with your accountability, right? Because now you see everything so,
Oh
in a
yeah.
different way. So as you're telling the story, it's cute. So, but was there a moment when you said, "Okay, I think this marriage, like, we can't go on like this"?
Oh yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of infighting, um, between his kids and my kids, and I would scream at him, "You got to fix this, you got to fix this," and it was just bad. And I oh god, it was probably the last argument we had on our patio. Um, he Him and my oldest son got into a fight, and I was super offended, um, because my son was clearly hurting, and he was just not going to understand that my son was hurting, and he was still choosing his kids over my kids, and I just was like, oh, I that just pit in the stomach, just sick. And I told one of my girlfriends, I said, if this ever happens again, I can't get to this place ever again. I
Mhm.
just It's just too hard. I just can't. I'm working too hard to try to make this work just to get blown away. And yeah. And I remember yelling, yelling, yelling at him that night and walking away. And we went to bed. And the next morning, he came home from work. And I said, yeah, but he came home from work the next day. And I looked at him and I said, "Matt," I said, I, I haven't been happy for a really, really long time." And he looked at me and he said, "You know, me neither." And oh, wow. I, for a split second, my mind was like, "How can you possibly not be happy? I'm doing everything. All you have to do is go to work." And that was just a blip because I saw his pain, and that about killed me. And so I looked at him and I said, "If we can't make each other happy," I said, "I don't know what to do." I said, "I don't, I want you happy and I want to be happy too. Um, but I just don't know what else to do." I said, maybe we should just get a divorce." And he said, "Well, She said, that's not what I want. And I said, well, it's really not what I want either. I just know that I can't keep doing this. And so I said to him, like, and he said, well, I guess we'll try. And I said, okay, yeah. But I don't know what to try. I said, we've never been to counseling. Maybe we should try that. And so he said, okay, sure, let's do it. So, I called up a counselor that I had talked to a handful of times, and he agreed to meet with us. And I said, great, okay, set up the meeting. And then in the meantime, we're kind of just a kind of a peace kind of fell over the home at that point. And I remember the next day he came home from work, and I looked at him and I said, hon, I said, if we're going to do this, I said, I don't want an okay marriage. I want a stellar marriage. I said, I'm not settling for anything less this if we're doing this.
Love that. Love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So that kind of was the beginning of the end of the 20 years of yuck.
Wow. Okay, before we get to the beginning of the end though, I love this story. I heard the story about Father's Day, and I would love for you to share because I think that is so relatable. So what
Oh,
you had there was a little bit of a breakdown on Father's Day.
oh yeah. That was probably the last pit in the stomach that I was talking about. Yeah,
Oh, okay. Okay.
it was Father's Day, and we had yeah, there was some issues going on between the kids, um, and I thought, oh great, Father's Day, we'll have them all over. My husband will be here, and he can just step in and take care of business, if there's any issues, right? So everybody's having a great time. We're in the pool, we're just having a nice time. And I was in the pool, and then my husband's sons, they break out into this fight on the back deck. And I'm like, what in the world? And my husband had gone to bed because he'd had enough to drink. And so he put himself to bed, smart, you know. Um, and, but I'm like, they're going to mess up my stuff. They're going to break stuff. And so my bright idea was to grab the water hose. So I get myself out of the pool, grab the water hose, and I start spraying them. And yeah, that's when my son, my husband's youngest son, he was very angry, and of course, the angrier he got, then I got angrier at him, and so now I am like thumb over the end of the sprayer in his face. It was ugly, so ugly. I can laugh about it now, but it was really, really ugly. And he grabbed the water hose and he smacked me across the face. And I was just dumbfounded. And I jumped down and walked up the steps and told him in no uncertain terms that he needed to leave my house. and he wouldn't leave. And he was just, he was standing his ground. He wasn't going to leave. So I went in the house and told my husband, just your son, just go fix it. I'm getting hurt physically now. What? And he just rolled over, and honestly, I don't really recollect what he said word for word, but it was just basically like, oh, it'll be fine. Or just dismissed me.
Wow.
And God, it was horrible. And so I walked back out on the patio, and I sat down in the chair to have myself a good pity party. And, his son came over, And he he said to me, he was like, he gave me a really weak apology. It was a really angry apology. And I remember it just wasn't I just wasn't I couldn't accept it at that moment. And I so anyway, I just told him, I said, just leave, please, just go. And and then at that point, his oldest son came over, the one who he'd been fighting with a minute ago, came over, and now he's yelling at me. He just apologized to you. Accept his apology. I'm like, and so now I have the two of them over me, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what do I do with this? There was no place in
Scary.
my person that I could put it. I what do you do? Yeah, it was, yeah, it was really bad.
And
And
your husband was pretty unmoved by all this. I mean, this was very scary for you, but it didn't. He was like, whatever.
yeah, and even when I mentioned it to him the next day, of course, I'm um, still feeling very, I don't even know the word for it. It was horrible what I felt. It just sick in my heart, in my soul, just everywhere. And, I was talking to him about it, and he was like, well, what do you want me to do about it? I was like, I want you to defend me. He goes, well, I'll call him. And so he calls him, and he was like, if you don't apologize to her, she's going to divorce me and it's going to cost me a bunch of money. And I was like, so you called your son to defend your checking account?
Yes, yes, it wasn't about you at all.
Yeah.
Felt even
Yeah.
more after that. I bet.
It was hard. I felt incredibly betrayed.
Oh,
Um,
definitely, definitely.
yeah. And yeah, so that sent us on that sent me on a bender for like 6 months where I just was like, hi, there are no words how
Mm.
horrible that was.
No, no, it sounds devastating. I mean, and I just appreciate you sharing about it, Deb, because you're not the only one that has incidents like this at your house.
Yeah.
And it's just great to get to see that glimpse of the inside of a real family, a blended family, right? But any family,
Yeah.
sometimes they get a little chaotic, right? So, but anyway, so you had this conversation with them, and you said, "I'm not okay with just an okay marriage. I'm going to have a stellar marriage." And you had this counselor. So what happened then?
Oh gosh. Well, I do want to back up just
Oh, sure.
because my relationship with my stepson now is stellar. So that incident is definitely behind us, and I love him dearly. So
Oh,
I don't
great to
want
hear.
anyone to think
No, no, no. And
no,
yeah, and
he's
it's not about that,
he's
right?
precious.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I just appreciate I mean, because you have your story is kind of like a before and an after. And the
yeah.
before, it's like the more dramatic that before, like the more rewarding it is to get to the after part. So,
Oh
but I
yeah.
appreciate, right, hearing it was kind of messy, right? It was messy in my home.
Oh, it was beyond messy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, in our counseling, we started counseling. We'd probably talk to the counselor. Maybe it's hard to put an exact amount of times. Maybe it was once a week for maybe 3, 5 weeks, something like that. And then I found your book. And well, actually, first I found uh, the webinar. I, yeah, found the webinar and I was like, okay, and I was jotting down my notes, during the webinar. And of course, being the good wife that I was, the webinar was about an hour long. But my husband got home like 45 minutes into it. So I didn't get to hear the last 15 minutes.
Oh,
Of course, a good wife
hangs
doesn't.
up what she's doing
Yeah,
and runs to, yeah,
yes.
right.
But I had the first 45 minutes were great, good enough for me. And man, and I started right then and there, the moment he walked in the door.
What did you
And
do?
oh my gosh, I listened to
I
him.
love it. Sounds simple, right? But was it
Yeah,
was it easy to do?
yeah, it was. It Yeah, that first night, it was very easy. Um, and we just had a really nice night.
Wow, love it.
Yeah.
Instant results.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It was great.
That is great. So then what happened?
Well, of course, because I had such great results in, one evening, I was like, I gotta get this lady's books.
You had all those books on your shelf. You had to make room for a couple more. Sounds like.
Well, I downloaded it on my phone. And so I downloaded The Surrendered Wife, and I'm sitting out on the back patio, and I devoured the whole thing in a morning, and bawled my eyes out.
Mm.
Yeah, because
Tell
I
me about
didn't
the.
know.
Yeah, you didn't know.
I
Nobody
had
ever. Nobody
no,
ever showed you. Nobody ever showed.
no. So, and I remember even that day, because I was just so convicted, I I text him immediately because I couldn't wait. I was like, I am texting him now. And man, I apologized like toot sweet. And and then everything just kind of took off like just great after that. It was just amazing. And I, and of course me and the way I am, I thought, well, if one book of yours is good, two's gotta be better.
More is definitely more, right?
So yeah, probably a week later, I downloaded The Empowered Wife and devoured that one. And yeah, it just got even better.
So, in your apology, what did you apologize for?
Oh, I think it was part apology and part acknowledgement for how awesome he is. I probably should have pulled that up on my phone because I don't remember what I said. All I remember then that I was really, really open for the first time and really just like, I do really love you. And all of those things that I was doing, they were out of love. I would just, you know, oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I hear like humility and conviction and courage and love. There, that was the overarching message of that apology. It sounds like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And he just, I remember he replied, like, no worries.
Oh,
And I
all,
thought,
all good.
yeah, like, all I needed, okay, we're great.
So he's very forgiving. Sounds like.
Oh my goodness. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Sweet. That is
Yeah.
sweet. And so what else did you start doing? So you were listening, you apologized. What else did you start doing differently than what you had been doing?
Oh, I remember in the beginning, I mean, oh, just, just listening to him was just respecting him. But I also remember um, looking for ways to be respectful. that was kind of my deal. It was like, whenever he was around, it was, I need to find a way to be respectful right now. And it might just be listening. That might just be it. Instead of scurrying around and um, cleaning up something or doing something or whatever, it's like, yeah, how can I be the most respectful Debbie right here, right now, in this moment?
Wow.
Yeah,
Love it. And
yeah.
how did it feel to make that switch from scurrying around to maybe just listening?
Oh, it was really awkward at first. Yeah, it was really awkward at first. But uh, he was so responsive though that it made it so easy. So every time I would, try another skill, whatever it was in the moment, it was I was empowered every single step of the way because he responded so well every single step of the way. You know,
Great.
yeah.
So, what's your relationship like now?
Oh my goodness. I'm thrilled. I do have stellar. I do have stellar.
Oh, you got
Um,
your intention. Love that.
yeah. And if things aren't stellar, which they're not always, I know exactly what to do. I can just kind of scan my side of the street and go, did you, didn't you? And yeah, and if there's nothing that, if there's nothing, well, if things start feeling heavy, it's like I skippity doo off to do something happy. you know?
I love that. So yeah, if your side of the street is clean, you're like, I must be time to go skipping.
Oh yeah. It could be anything. I don't know.
Yeah, right. Not my
I,
paper. Yeah, you
right.
can figure that out. Oh, if you were gonna give a tip to a woman who maybe someone's listening and she's like, "Yeah, I have the grumpiest husband in the world. He ignores me, and his kids are really disrespectful. I have a blended family. It's very stressful. It's lonely." And she wants to create what you have where now she feels connected and she feels empowered that she can make her relationship stellar. She wants to have that like you do. Where should she
Yeah.
start? What would you suggest for her?
Oh my goodness. If she was, if I could see in her that she was giving to get, I would say give the majority of that to yourself. You can still give to other people, but turn 90% of that towards yourself. Yeah.
Just taking care of Debbie instead of everybody
Yeah.
else. That made it. So you're no
Yeah.
longer doing all that. You don't do the yard work and clean the sanctuary on Wednesdays, I bet. Or do you?
Oh no. No. I do stuff, but I do it because I choose to, not because yeah.
Because this is going to make him notice you and appreciate you. Is that not that?
Yeah. I get noticed for me now, not my accomplishments.
And if you could go back in time and talk to Deb from before, knowing what you know now, what would you say to her?
Oh gosh. Because I know me. I would probably tell her, quit being so stubborn about what you think you know.
Wow. So in the story, it sounds like you were really open. Like you got the books and you cried through those books and you saw a different perspective. So when you say you were stubborn, something must have melted you. Sounds like.
Oh, I just didn't want to hurt anybody.
Yeah, and
And
I
when
think
I realized I had been, with all of my good intentions, I was, I thought, oh Lord, what have I been doing? What have I been doing? You know? I was the steamroller.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, gosh, I relate to you so much in your steamroller stories and all the good ideas you have. And you have such a good sense of humor about the way you tell those stories. So it's very endearing, entertaining to hear your stories. But I get there was also just a world of hurt of realizing you didn't know what you didn't know. And um, yeah, it was painful to realize. When,
Oh, the I mean, because I guess at that point, I I guess why I was so heartsick over it was because I knew how awful I felt in those moments. And if I felt that awful, that's what I'd been putting out to them. They were feeling that awful too. And I thought, oh, you didn't want to do that to nobody.
never meant to. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And so the flip side of that is kind of this I know for me, it was a horrible moment of realizing I'd hurt my husband so much too. But also exciting because I was like, oh, okay, now I know what I can do different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, finally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Finally, I have some action steps that I can do. Yeah.
And you jumped into action and you got a totally different response. It sounds like, I don't know, would you say your husband changed in this process?
Oh, he just went back to the person that he was. Um, he didn't ever really change. He was always there. That just generous, loyal, um, just amazing man. Yeah, it was hidden behind all of my garbage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're not the only one. And I just want to thank you so much for telling the story, telling the nitty gritty, relatable, inside details that we all kind of need to hear in order to see ourselves. And, I just know it's so valuable for me. It's inspiring for me. So thank you so much for showing the way to create not just an okay marriage, but a stellar marriage.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so much.
you.
If you'd like to be my guest on the Empowered Wife podcast and share about how you fixed a struggling relationship using the 6 intimacy skills, I would love to interview you. Just go to lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest to let me know that you are willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce by telling your relationship story. I look forward to meeting you. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest. And now it's time for the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award.
It's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice. Yeah, it's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice of the week.
And the advice I find most perplexing this week is from an article about collaborative couple therapy. In the article, they suggest to use open-ended questions with your partner. And the example that they give is, "You're quiet tonight. Is something wrong?" Now, the idea that this is an open-ended question is lost on me because that particular question is leading down a dead-end dark alley. The focus is on something wrong. What is it? Imagine you're just trying to remember what it was you were going to buy at the grocery store, and someone says, "You're awfully quiet. What's wrong?" You might say, "No, no, no." But they've already made a case that something is wrong. So now you're just denying it. Just to see how badly this would land at my house, I tested it on my husband, John, who is way too smart for me, and he immediately made a face. And then I asked him how that question landed, and he said, "It felt like an attack." It matters what you seek. If you're looking for things to be wrong, you will find them. If you're looking for things to be good, you will find those too, in my experience. Instead of asking a negative open-ended question and making leaps onto my husband's paper, I say things about my paper, how I'm feeling, like it's so good to see you, or this is great that we can just relax together tonight. Or sometimes I say, it's happening again. And he says, what? And I say, I'm ridiculously happy. So I'm looking for what I'm happy about. And that helps create emotional safety because it's clear I'm not looking for trouble. And I'm not going to blame him for anything except that I'm so happy, which he likes anyway. And for that reason, the advice to ask a question, you're so quiet tonight, is something wrong, is the very worst relationship advice I've heard all week. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. Next week, we'll talk about how to deal with disrespect in marriage. And in the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that I am never as excited to use my old password as I am at the moment that I find out that my new password can't be the same as my old password.